How do you keep a murder hidden for months? For Richard Kuklinski, the answer was simple: freeze the bodies of his victims. This disturbing tactic earned him the nickname the Iceman and allowed him to mislead investigators for years. In this documentary, we'll explore the puzzling duality of one of America's most calculating contract killers. What drove a seemingly normal family man in suburban New Jersey to claim over 200 victims? His story takes us through the darkest corners of criminal psychology, from the traumatic childhood that shaped him to the methodical violence that defined his criminal career. We'll reveal how this facade of normalcy finally cracked, and how determined law enforcement ultimately brought this chilling killer to justice. The path to becoming one of America's most notorious hitmen began in a small apartment in Jersey City on April 11, 1935. Richard Kuklinski entered a world where violence was the foundation upon which his entire childhood was built. His father, Stanley, a railway brakeman by profession and alcoholic by habit, transformed their home into a battlefield where Richard and his siblings learned early that safety was never guaranteed. Stanley's drunken rages were regular occurrences that scarred both body and mind. One winter night, young Richard was thrown against a wall with such force that his back bore the bruises for weeks. Yet he dared not cry. Showing pain only provoked more violence. This conditioning created an environment where fear became Richard's default emotional state, a psychological foundation that would later enable him to inflict terror without experiencing empathy. The most formative event in Richard's life came in 1941, when his older brother Florian died under suspicious circumstances. While the official story claimed he fell down the stairs, the truth was darker. Stanley had beaten his son to death during an alcoholic rage. Instead of facing consequences, his parents fabricated the accident story, teaching Richard crucial lessons that would shape his criminal career. Death could be disguised, and killers could escape justice through deception. His mother, Anna, compounded this trauma, wielding broom handles that often broke across Richard's body during punishments. She would force him to kneel on rice for hours while reciting prayers, creating a toxic association between spirituality and suffering. This combination of physical brutality and religious manipulation created a perfect vacuum where empathy couldn't take root. In this emotional wasteland, Richard experimented with violence himself. He began mutilating neighborhood pets, later describing how he felt a rush of power when strangling a cat. The first time he felt in control when everything else in his life left him powerless. These weren't childish misbehaviors, but rehearsals for future brutality. The constant trauma created an adaptive response where emotional detachment became necessary for survival. This detachment evolved into something dangerous, the ability to compartmentalize completely, separating his capacity for violence from moral restraint. The child who once cowered under his father's fists became a man capable of inflicting death without hesitation. Richard's criminal journey began with theft, escalating when he discovered that intimidation amplified his success. These petty crimes evolved into distributing pirated pornography in the 1960s, operating in shadows that created connections, eventually leading him to the Gambino crime family. His progression from abused child to criminal adult was incremental. The survival skills from his childhood, emotional detachment, hypervigilance, and hiding his true nature, became the toolkit for a man who would eventually kill for money. While most men would beg for their lives with a gun pressed against their temple, Richard Kuklinski did something that changed his destiny. He showed absolutely no fear. This single, chilling reaction during a business dispute with Roy DeMeo saved his life and opened the door to a new profession where his emotional emptiness became his most marketable skill. The Gambino crime family's first interest in Kuklinski wasn't for his skill as a killer, but for his operation pirating pornographic films. This underground business had created connections that would prove fateful, particularly his introduction to Roy DeMeo, a feared Gambino enforcer whose reputation for brutality preceded him. Their early business relationship was built on the distribution of illicit materials, giving Kuklinski a foothold in organized crime without immediately revealing his darker capabilities. That all changed during what should have been a routine business meeting. The details of their confrontation remain shrouded in the murky recollections of criminals, but tensions escalated quickly. DeMeo, known for his hair-trigger temper, pulled a gun and pressed it against Kuklinski's head, a moment that would have sent most men into panic. But Kuklinski wasn't most men. The childhood that had broken him had also forged him into something else entirely. A being whose emotional responses had calcified into something inhuman. Facing imminent death, he displayed no emotion at all. He simply stared back at DeMeo with cold, empty eyes that reflected nothing, like staring into frozen lakes rather than human pupils. This unnerving calm fascinated DeMeo. Here was someone who possessed a rare quality, complete emotional detachment, even when staring into the abyss. DeMeo lowered his weapon, recognizing that Kuklinski's psychological makeup might be valuable in ways beyond pornography distribution. The encounter transformed their relationship. DeMeo began using Kuklinski as an enforcer to collect debts, where his imposing presence and dead-eyed stare proved remarkably effective. When intimidation failed, Kuklinski escalated to violence without hesitation or remorse. His abuse-hardened psyche perfectly suited for intimidation and enforcement. His efficiency caught attention within the Gambino organization. With each successful job, Kuklinski evolved from pornography distributor to enforcer to valued hitman. His emotional void made him ideally suited for contract killing, while his versatility and adaptability made him a sought-after asset across multiple crime families. Perhaps most remarkable was Kuklinski's ability to compartmentalize his life. To his neighbors in suburban New Jersey, he was simply a businessman, a wholesale distributor, as his wife Barbara believed. His family had no knowledge of his actual activities. He maintained the facade of a devoted family man, attending his children's events and participating in normal community life. This duality allowed Kuklinski to operate undetected for years, leaving his suburban home dressed for business, committing heinous acts of violence, and returning to dinner with his family. The psychological barriers between these two existences remained impenetrable, allowing him to switch between family man and killer with disturbing ease. The perfect murder isn't just about killing without witnesses, it's about manipulating time itself. Kuklinski's signature technique didn't just hide his victims, it erased the very timeline of their deaths, creating a forensic puzzle that protected him from prosecution even when bodies were eventually found. This innovation would earn him the chilling moniker the Iceman and confound medical examiners for years. The case of Louis Masgay demonstrates this temporal manipulation. On July 1, 1981, Masgay disappeared after meeting Kuklinski for a routine purchase of blank video cassettes. Kuklinski executed him with a single bullet to the head, then stored the body in a freezer for 15 months. When discovered on September 25, 1983, in a park near Orangetown, New York, medical examiners found ice crystals still present in Masgay's tissues, a discovery that baffled forensic experts who had never encountered such evidence before. Like a master chess player, Kuklinski had rendered time itself unreliable. The presence of ice crystals made establishing an accurate timeline impossible. Without knowing when the murder actually occurred, investigators couldn't connect Kuklinski to the crime. He easily provided alibis for the supposed time of death, while the actual murder had occurred months earlier. Kuklinski's approach to murder was pragmatic and adaptable. For public situations requiring speed, he used firearms with precision. When discretion was paramount, he employed more subtle methods. His decision-making process always prioritized efficiency and minimal evidence. Cyanide became his weapon of choice for its lethality and difficulty of detection. He would spray it directly into victims' faces, incorporate it into food or drinks, or administer it by injection. The poison's rapid action made it ideally suited to his purposes. His methods extended beyond conventional approaches. Kuklinski occasionally employed ice picks, creating wounds easily mistaken for natural causes. He even developed a remote-controlled toy rigged with explosives for eliminating targets from a distance. Body disposal showed equal calculation. Beyond freezing, he used dismemberment, acid baths, and disposal sites where rats would consume the evidence. Each location was selected to minimize discovery and maximize decomposition. This methodical planning made pattern recognition nearly impossible. While most serial killers develop a signature style that becomes their undoing, Kuklinski's chameleon-like adaptability prevented law enforcement from connecting his crimes. Each murder appeared isolated, committed with different weapons, bodies disposed of through different means. His freezing technique gave him complete control over when and where bodies would be discovered. This represented criminal sophistication rarely seen, transforming murder from an act of violence to a coldly calculated science where even time itself became an accomplice. For Richard Kuklinski, trust was merely a tool to be exploited, particularly within his own criminal enterprises. While his mob contracts required clinical detachment, it was his personal betrayals that revealed the true depths of his calculated ruthlessness. Beyond the frozen bodies and cyanide poisonings, Kuklinski's most revealing murders weren't professional hits. They were the cold-blooded executions of his own associates. January 30th, 1980 marked the first of these intimate killings. George Maliband arrived for what he thought was a routine business meeting to sell videotapes to Kuklinski. Instead, he walked into his own execution. The $27,000 Maliband carried likely sealed his fate, transforming him from business partner to target. Kuklinski fired 5 shots into Maliband's body before displaying his practical approach to corpse disposal, cutting the tendons in Maliband's legs to fold the body into a 55-gallon drum. The barrel was abandoned near Jersey City's Chemitex chemical plant, remaining undiscovered for nearly a week. His predatory instincts extended beyond burglary operations. When pharmacist Paul Hoffman attempted to purchase stolen prescription drugs in April 1982, Kuklinski saw another opportunity. Hoffman vanished after heading to meet Kuklinski with $25,000. Years later, through a plea bargain, Kuklinski revealed how he lured the 51-year-old into a rented garage and beat him to death with a tire iron. Following his established pattern, Kuklinski disposed of Hoffman's body in another drum and abandoned it outside a Little Ferry motel. Unlike Maliband, Hoffman's remains were never recovered, representing a perfect disappearance in Kuklinski's lethal portfolio. The most telling insight into Kuklinski's paranoid mindset came through the murders of his own burglary associates. By December 1982, Gary Smith had become a liability. Fearing Smith might turn informant, Kuklinski orchestrated his elimination with clinical efficiency, first poisoning him with cyanide, then having another associate, Daniel Deppner, strangle him. This redundancy in killing methods was revealing. Forensic pathologist Michael Baden later noted the poison alone might have suggested a non-homicidal cause like drug overdose. The telltale ligature mark around Smith's neck, however, made the murder unmistakable. Smith's body was hidden between a mattress and box spring at the York Motel, discovered after guests complained about the odor. The killing of Daniel Deppner between February and May 1983 completed Kuklinski's paranoid purge. Having enlisted Deppner to help kill Smith, Kuklinski evidently decided Deppner himself knew too much. After murdering Deppner in a Bergenfield apartment, Kuklinski manipulated an associate named Rich Patterson to help dispose of the body, claiming Deppner was a friend in trouble, killed by intruders. On May 14th, Deppner's decomposed body was found in West Milford, wrapped in garbage bags, bearing signs of both cyanide poisoning and strangulation. Mirroring Smith's death, a crucial clue emerged in Deppner's stomach contents, partially digested burned beans, suggesting a home-cooked final meal. The burned beans in Deppner's stomach represented just one microscopic thread in an incomplete tapestry of evidence. But to catch Richard Kuklinski, law enforcement would need to abandon their traditional investigative playbook entirely and implement a strategy so risky it could cost an agent his life. As investigators connected multiple unsolved homicides, a specialized joint task force emerged. Operation Iceman brought together the New Jersey Attorney General's office and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, whose involvement was justified through Kuklinski's illegal firearms activities. The investigation intensified after establishing Kuklinski was the last person seen with multiple victims, including Paul Hoffman, Gary Smith, Daniel Deppner, Louis Masgay, and George Maliband. At the heart of this operation was ATF Special Agent Dominic Polifrone, who undertook a dangerously bold undercover assignment. For 18 months, Polifrone immersed himself in Kuklinski's world under the alias Dominic Provenzano. Playing a well-connected criminal with mafia ties, Polifrone's mission resembled a high-stakes chess match, each meeting a calculated move to advance toward checkmate. Every time I sat with him, Polifrone later recalled, I knew I could be the next body on his list if I made one wrong move. These meetings were extraordinarily perilous. Sitting across from a man known to have murdered associates without hesitation, Polifrone engaged in conversations where Kuklinski openly discussed his methodologies and past killings. In one exchange, Polifrone purchased a handgun muffler combination, strengthening their criminal relationship while building the case. The recordings revealed Kuklinski's disturbing mindset. He calmly described keeping a victim frozen for 2.5 years. When discussing poison, Kuklinski stated with clinical detachment, "Why be messy? You do it nice and calm." These were confessions being captured for eventual prosecution. After each meeting, Polifrone admitted, I'd check my pulse to make sure I was still alive. The operation culminated on December 17, 1986. Kuklinski met Polifrone to acquire cyanide for his next contract, the planned murder of an undercover officer. Following their recorded conversation, Kuklinski tested the supposed cyanide on a stray dog. When the animal survived, he grew suspicious and returned home. 2 hours later, law enforcement arrested him at a roadblock. The charges were extensive: 5 murder counts, 6 weapons violations, attempted murder, robbery, and attempted robbery. Investigators discovered substantial funds in Swiss accounts and flight reservations, suggesting escape plans. Upon arrest, Kuklinski dismissed the operation, telling reporters, "This is unwarranted, unnecessary. These guys watch too many movies." During trial, former associates provided crucial testimony. Agent Polifrone detailed their incriminating conversations. Though the defense portrayed Kuklinski as merely projecting a tough image, the evidence proved overwhelming. In March 1988, the jury found Kuklinski guilty of murdering Gary Smith and Daniel Deppner, though he avoided the death penalty. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of Kuklinski's legacy isn't just what he did, but how thoroughly he compartmentalized his existence. His wife Barbara described living with 2 versions of her husband, Good Richie and Bad Richie, maintaining a deliberate ignorance about his work life. His family was genuinely shocked upon his arrest, having believed him to be a legitimate businessman. After nearly 18 years behind bars, Richard Kuklinski died in a secure hospital wing on March 5, 2006. At 70 years old, cardiac arrest from Kawasaki disease complications claimed the man who lived 2 lives: family provider by day, merciless killer by night. How many other monsters walk among us, hiding behind ordinary facades?